Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome back to another episode of the Steelers Burning Question. I am Jeff Hartman, editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, and I hope you're doing well tonight because tonight we're talking about yet another controversial topic. If you didn't listen to my episode last week I dug into the Mike Tomlin discussion. And when I say the Mike Tomlin discussion, I'm referring to the fact of whether Mike Tomlin should be or should have his contract extended or whether he should not have his contract extended. And I went into detail. And if you haven't listened to that, make sure you go back and check that out. You can do that here live on YouTube, or you could check it out in podcast form anywhere where you download your podcast. All you have to do is search Steelers, BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, anything like that. And there you have it. You'll find us there. Today's discussion is going to be I think it's going to be a little bit more difficult for certain fans to not be partial, because after all, we're talking about the fan base. If you check the headline and the title of this episode, it is, do the Steelers really have the best fans in the National Football League? And everyone that's listening to this most likely is a member of what we call Steeler Nation. There, wherever you live, whether it's overseas, whether it's here in the States, whether it's in Mexico, Canada, doesn't matter. You are considered part of the black and gold fan base, which is very vast. I did an article last year, and last summer, it was about this time actually, and I actually pinned it. It's still on the website, I believe, and it was all about how far-reaching is BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. And we had almost hit every major country we hit every state in every 50 states in the United States of America. We got them. We got a lot of different places in Canada, places in Mexico, Central America. We got over into Europe. Got a lot of people over in Europe and Ireland, in Russia, all over the globe. It was really amazing for me because when I took over this website, I guess it was over 5 years ago now, you just don't know the far-reaching the reach in website terms. There's just the reach in general of the website until you hear some of these stories and you hear people talk and you meet some people. And when they say, wait, are you Jeff Hartman from BehindTheSteelCurtain.com? You say, yeah, I am. Like, oh my gosh, you realize that you're writing it for a website, you're talking in a podcast that a lot of people are listening to. So it's tough for me even to say that the Steelers fan base isn't the best. But what I have to look at and what I'm checking out, and I'm going to read to you here in a second. I hate reading to people except my kids. And that is an Emory University study. They do this every year where they have their own way of breaking down which fan base is the best. Now, we had a writer, Simon Chester, wrote this article for the website BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. It is still there on the main page. It's not at the top 8. It's a little bit lower, but you can still find it. You can still read it, and you can check it out. But long story short, the Steelers were ranked 5th amongst fan bases, 5th. They were behind the Cowboys, the Patriots, the Eagles, and the Giants. Those 4 teams, and the Pittsburgh Steelers were 5th in regards to the best fans in the National Football League. So let me read to you how they came about this before anyone says anything, before I answer any questions, before we do anything else. I want you all to understand how they came, because this was a study. This wasn't a poll. This wasn't like an Emory University. We went and polled 1,000 students, and here's what they said. This was a study. So here's what it is. What makes for a great fan or brand? Fans that show up even when the team is losing, fans that are willing to pay the highest prices, fans that are willing to follow a team on social media, fans that show up to see the team play in other markets, all good options. Even after we agree on the question, answering it is also a challenge. How do we adjust for the fact that one team might have gone on a miraculous run that filled the stadium, or perhaps the team suffered a slew of injuries? How do we compare fan behavior in a market like New York with the fan base like in Green Bay? My approach to evaluating fan bases uses data on attendance, revenues, social media following, and road attendance to develop statistical models of fan interest. The key is that the models are used to determine which cities' fans are more willing to spend or follow their teams after controlling for factors like market size and short-term changes in winning and losing. Similar to past years, I use the three measures of fan engagement: fan equity, social equity, and road equity. There's a lot more to it. You can dive into deeper with that, but those are the nuts and bolts of how the Emory University team studied and did this study and came up with this report to somehow say that these fan bases were how they ranked. First and foremost, revenue is tough to gauge by, because the Dallas Cowboys are by far the wealthiest team in terms of bringing money in the National Football League. It's between them, I believe, and the Washington Redskins. Both are valued well over $1 billion, and that number just continues to go up. Then you look at like winning and losing. The Giants are in a downswing. The Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl 2 years ago. The Patriots won it last year. The Cowboys are the Cowboys, and the Steelers are the Steelers. So I get those two teams there. The Giants, it's a very national brand as well. It's an old team. There's a lot of, you know, I guess you could call them old fans in the Giants fan base. They have the old school fans back with Phil Simms, and when you had Lawrence Taylor and all those players, but then you had the Eli Manning runs where they beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl. You have those type of fans. So their fan base has grown tremendously, just like the Steelers did when they won Super Bowl 40 and Super Bowl 43. The one thing that I don't like about this study, and the more that I read, and this is not just the Emory University study that gets this wrong. There's a lot of people that, and you hear it on national games all the time, or any football game really, whether it's on Fox, CBS, NBC, doesn't matter. They'll say, and you can see this terrible towels when the Steelers are on the road. I should preface that. The terrible towels, look at how great these fans follow their team. I'm not suggesting that there aren't Steeler fans that go and travel to watch the team play. But the vast majority of those fans that are at visiting or away stadiums are fans that just live there, period. So in this study, the Steelers wouldn't get credit for having a vast and wide-reaching fan base because fans didn't necessarily pick up and travel to that game. And so that's where I think the Steelers have an edge. Maybe, I guess if you have 1A, 1B, it's the Cowboys and the Steelers in terms of in my opinion, the largest fan base in terms of stretching not just the United States borders, but beyond. And so I get what they're doing, and I think it's a really neat perspective. It's the first time, and they do this every year, but there's really the only study that tries to somehow justify whether or how a fan base could be ranked. And how else are you going to do this? Because a lot of Steeler fans on our website, behindthesteelcurtain.com, said, well, this is ridiculous. Well, it's like, well, okay, well, they at least came up with a theory, with a way about finding out how this was going to work. Whereas I couldn't think of this. I couldn't think of how to judge which fan base is better than the other. Mine would be the obnoxious scale. Which fan base is less obnoxious? For instance, the Cowboy fan would be at the top of the list because they are the most obnoxious, in my opinion. And I say that living in Maryland and having to deal with Ravens fans all the time. But here's the kicker. Steeler fans, they always want to say that we're the best. We are the best. And that's fine. You should be proud. You should be proud of things like the fact that the team has won 6 Super Bowl titles. You should be proud of the fact that they're competitive year in and year out, that they haven't had a losing season and since Mike Tomlin took the helm in 2007. Those are all things that Steeler fans should be awesome. Like, hang your hat on those because no one can take those away. But at the same time, the Steelers fan base can be fickle, and they can be a spoiled bunch. I've said this time and time again. I feel that if the Steelers were to win the Super Bowl in 2019, when I write the game recap and I hit the publish button, they've just won Super Bowl title number 7. There will be someone that comments a negative aspect of the game. Guarantee it. I guarantee it would happen. Why? Because I've been around this fan base enough. I've seen and heard from in terms of comments more than I care to know sometimes. But there would be someone that say, yeah, they won, but if Joe Hayden would have caught that interception, it wouldn't have been so close. Or, yeah, they won, but the Steelers should have run the ball more. Yeah, they won, but if Mike Tomlin doesn't challenge that play, blah, 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 there's always going to be those people. And that would drive me nuts because if you can't sit back and just enjoy a win, and that is what it's come down to. That's literally what it's come down to. That there is a majority. Let me take that back. There's a large portion. I'm not going to say the majority. That even in the regular season, when the Steelers win, they can't enjoy it. They can't enjoy it. They can't take a win's a win. The Steelers won the game. They can't enjoy it. They have to be negative. They have to be the negative Nancy. They have to be the Debbie Downer, whatever you want to call it. Um, I'm not saying you always have to be rainbows and butterflies and all that stuff, and it's always great. But at the same time, winning ugly is fine by me as long as you're winning. And that's why in 2017, when the Steelers finished 13-3 and they were skating by teams that I think sometimes were a little bit closer. The Green Bay game without Aaron Rodgers comes to mind. The Steelers fan base, they love to say that they're the best, and I'm not disagreeing, but let's not also have our blinders on and not see that there's a lot of people in this fan base that, like I said, fickle and very, very spoiled. But with that said, if I'm taking the 5 teams that they had the Emory University study, and they said, okay, here are your 5 teams, you have to rank them in terms of fans. In my opinion, this is just me. Okay, so you have the Cowboys, the Eagles, the Giants, all the NFC East except for the Redskins, the Patriots, and the Steelers. The only 2 AFC teams listed in the study in the top 5. I'm going to say no to the Patriots because I feel like the only reason they're there is because in the Tom Brady and Bill Belichick era, they've won a ton. And I get it. I get it. There was a time when the Patriots and Boston sports were punchlines for jokes. And now, well, they're dominant. Good for them. But that doesn't mean that their fan base is the best. It just means that they're the best right now. That's key for me. The Philadelphia Eagles, they would be up there near the top because those fans suffer through a lot. They suffer through the Andy Reid collapses, the Donovan McNabb choke jobs, Michael Vick. They went through a lot in recent history. Kevin Cobb, if you remember him, that's a name. They went through a lot. They are very passionate fans. They stick by their team. They're going to root hard, but they're going to boo hard if they don't like what's going on. I'm going to put the Eagles near the top. They haven't always been winners. We'll put it that way. The Giants, I think that's a loyal group. They're very New York is New York. Although the New York fan base can be split between, the Giants and the Jets, I have to think that the Giants seem to have more tradition. Yeah, there was the Joe Namath and the guarantee and all that stuff, but it's the Giants that seem to drive that city. And so I think that the Giants, their fans they're being tested now. I'll put it that way. They're being tested now with the Eli Manning era coming to an end. It's not pretty. Questionable moves by the front office, losing seasons, firing head coaches. We'll see how that comes out, but I'm putting them up near the top as well. The Dallas Cowboys, like I said, when it comes to the vastness of their fan base in terms of reach, it's probably second only to Pittsburgh, if not more. And they have more of a following on social media, which was one of the factors in that Emory University study. But they're also a team that will abandon their team very quickly. You saw it in years past when the team doesn't look like they're going to make the playoffs or when they're eliminated from the playoffs. Silence, crickets, nothing. But the Pittsburgh Steelers fan base has been through a lot, especially in the last few seasons. They've had to endure even going back to the early Ben Roethlisberger days, his motorcycle accident, his off the field issues. They had to deal with James Harrison and his departure. Then you get into Le'Veon Bell's contract disputes. You get into Antonio Brown. They've been through a lot, and they haven't been winning the big dance at that time. Fans would tolerate that stuff if you're winning Super Bowls, but the Steelers haven't been winning Super Bowls, haven't won one in over a decade now. So the Pittsburgh Steelers fan base for me is still growing. They still are a brand, and they still are a team that everyone wants to see, and that's why every single season they get the max 5 primetime games. To me, it's a toss-up between the Steelers, the Cowboys, and the Eagles for the number 1, and then you can put the Giants and the Patriots in the back of that top 5. That's just my list. If you wanna rank them out and you look at in the live chat, if you're watching live on YouTube, you want to rank those 5 out however you would. That'd be awesome. If you're listening in on the behindthesteelcurtain.com and you have the article up in front of you, go ahead and comment and list those 5 out the way that you think they should be. I would expect the Steelers to be number 1, and that's fine. But if you want to look at it from a outsider's perspective, maybe it'll be different. Let us know. Now's also the time in the show where I kind of switch gears and I answer your questions. So I answered my burning question. I do think the Steelers have arguably, you can definitely argue for the Steelers in terms of the best fans in the National Football League. But now this is where you get to have your questions answered. So in the live chat, if you didn't know, you can use what's called the super chat feature. And I saw a couple other people already during my little monologue throw some money into what we call a tip jar now. And so what you do is on YouTube, you're looking at, chat publicly at BTSE Steelers Radio. On the right is a little dollar sign. You can type in your question, hit that dollar sign, put up any amount of money. We put it in the tip jar. We appreciate all the contributions, and I will guarantee to answer your question as long as it's Steelers related, somehow, shape, or form, or behind the steel curtain related. And so some people have just said, hey, love the show. Here's a couple bucks. We appreciate it. All that money goes straight into an account. That account hits a threshold. We then can then get that money and use it however we like. So let's get to some questions here. Okay. Have a lot of people chiming in about the, where people would go. Getting Bent with Bo gives us his ranking. I love his rankings. Number 1, Steelers. Number 2, Steelers. Number 3, Steelers. How do you go wrong with that? That's right. Thanks for that. We appreciate that, Bo. Lance says teams create packages so we don't take over stadiums. I don't think it was the NFL. I think it was actually the NHL. The the Pittsburgh Penguins, I want to say, were playing. It was either the New Jersey Devils or the Philadelphia Flyers um, in their obviously those are both close. They blocked certain area codes from being able to buy tickets. So teams have done that. Yeah, they try to keep the Steeler fans out, but it's rare. I think back to like last year on Monday Night Football when they went down to Tampa Bay. My gosh, they overran the stadium. Overran the stadium. So there you go. It's here. Crazy Chris says, well, actually, forget that. Ollie says, all Steelers tied with the Steelers. I knew that was going to happen. I tried to stay as bipartisan as possible. Crazy Chris says, hey, Jeff, would Juju be better off overall as a player to lose that Saints game and bounce back into third year okay. I think what he's saying is the fumble last year against the Saints, is that somehow going to make Juju Smith-Schuster a better player? Well, I think it's going to make him a more humble player, number 1. I think it's going to help him learn that you got to protect the football. You try to think about some altruistic statement here about how he needs to, understand that not everything goes well. No, he just needs to learn to protect the football. So I think he will remember that. I think that will help him definitely get better. Steeler fans and Pats fans travel well. I don't want to hear anything about Patriot fans. Forget that. It's here, Jeff. Who do you think was better, Juju or Santonio Holmes? That's from Steelers fan 19. That's tough because Juju's only going into the year 3, and Santonio Holmes had a lot more than 3 years in Pittsburgh. And Santonio played on the biggest, he played best on the biggest stage, and he was also the number one guy. I know Hines Ward was there, but Santonio was the more prolific receiver. So as of right now, I'm going to say Santonio, but let's revisit that in a couple years with Juju Smith-Schuster. Um, let's see here. Felicia, Steeler Nation is the best. She puts $10 in the tip jar. You're the best, Felicia. You're the best. We appreciate all the money you give to the show. Absolutely appreciate that. Isaac puts $20 in the tip jar. It isn't nice to be hearing all the negative crap about the Steelers. Oh, not to be here. I was like, man, what did I miss? He said, isn't it nice to not be here? Absolutely. As a website editor and someone that, my boss looks at our website numbers and he wants to see my numbers go up regardless. And so when Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell were acting like idiots, it was really easy. It's like shooting fish in a barrel. Now it's a little bit tougher. So now, on the website, we're still giving you 8 articles a day. Um, we're doing some features out there. Like right now, one of our writers, Flip, who's doing a great job going through some of the lesser known players on the offseason roster. Like I know Frank Webb's coming up, some of the undrafted rookies, and he's just giving a breakdown so you kind of get to know these players a little bit in case maybe they surprise everyone and make the 53-man roster. We just started our 30 predictions in 30 days. As of Tuesday, there were 30 days until training camp start. That's it. Just 30 days. And so myself and Simon Chester are alternating days where we're just making a prediction for the upcoming season. I know my first one was ridiculed like crazy, but I said, hey, here's the prediction. Ben Roethlisberger finishes with the lowest interception rates in his career in 2019 for any season he played in more than 13 games. And people said that's crazy. It's not going to happen. Well, what we do is we make the prediction. We say why it will happen, why it won't happen, and then you can vote in the poll and let us know. So that's going to be every single day leading up to training camp. We have a bunch of other cool stuff. So to answer your question, Isaac, it is great, but at the same time, the drama was good for traffic. We'll put it that way. All right, Daryl Grant asked Jeff pick the 5 or 6 wide receivers in 2019 to make the roster. For me, I think they're going to keep 6. Barring injury, I think that 6 is pretty much already set in stone. I know there's a lot of people that want to give some lesser known players a chance, and I'm not against that, but I just don't see the 6 of Juju Smith-Schuster, James Washington, Dante Moncrief, Deontay Johnson, Ryan Switzer, and Eli Rogers. I don't see any of those players being bumped off the list. And so I'm going to go with 6, and those are my 6 right there. Just named it. And Greg says, hey, because Lance is in the live chat, Lance Williams, my co-host on The Standard, is a standard that runs every Sunday in the off season. He's a great podcast. If you're watching live on YouTube right now, if you don't know that Lance has his own show, it's a shorter show, but it's called Yeah, I Said It. It's only on our podcast platform. Go check it out. This one was a great one. A lot of analytics, a lot of time spent looking at personnel packages and comparing that to the training camp battle with the wide receiver position, since we just talked about wide receivers. Go check that out anywhere where you can download podcasts, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, you name it. Find it, listen to it. We're going to try to get that on YouTube by the regular season. Okay. Let's see here. Trying to catch up here. Sorry. So Felicia puts 2 more bucks in the tip jar and says, hey, Lance. Lance has a friend. That's for sure. Do you think, this is from Donald, do you think the Rams let Barron go because he started to fall off, only played 12 games last year? Looking at Vince's stats compared to Barron, I'll take Vince over Barron. I think that the defense is going to ask both players to do something completely different. I'm not going to compare them like apples to apples. Not for me. Because I look at this and say Barron's skill set is different than anything else. It's not one where you have Vince Williams and Barron are like both Larry Foote type players. Now, these are 2 different guys. I think they have a role for both. The Rams probably let him go because of contractual issues, and ultimately, I just think that the Steelers were looking for a guy that could fill that middle inside linebacker role if they weren't able to get the player they wanted in the draft. They did get one of the players they wanted in the draft, and now they have not too many at the position, but they have an added insurance policy and another weapon to utilize because they had Barron, because they got Bush. They were able to let some other guys walk. So I don't think it's necessarily apples to apples. Uh, Here we go. We got another. So your vodka drinker put $6 in the tip jar. He says, "I want Emory College to do a list of the most irrational fans in the NFL." Well, that's a different story altogether, vodka drinker. That could be irrational fans. What? No, the Steelers don't have irrational fans. Get out of here. But that would always be, as Ali says, I feel like the Cowboys would be atop of that list too, because that it's just crazy. So there we go. Let's see here. It's your Jeff. If the Steelers won the Super Bowl, who would get MVP, and would I go to the parade? Let's see here. If I were to guess, I think that if the Steelers win the Super Bowl, that Ben Roethlisberger would win the most valuable player, because even though I thought he deserved it in Super Bowl 43 for the last drive, they gave it to Santonio Holmes. Both you could pick either one. I think that Ben Roethlisberger would probably get that. Would I go to the parade? I don't know if I'd go to the parade. I do know in the past that Vox Media has sent um, said editors to the Super Bowl times. I would see if I could be one of those people to be there and actually watch the game live. That would be amazing. But if not, I'd try to get back to Pittsburgh and get you guys as much live coverage as I could. Okay, so that's the best that I could do. It all depends. There's so many factors involved with weather, with travel, with work, and all that stuff. Family. So there you go. A lot of people want Lance's show on YouTube. We'll try. I'm trying. All right, I'm trying. We gotta work together here. So it's here. Ali says question. What's the over under for questions Le'Veon Bell will answer about the robbery at camp? Well, if he was in Pittsburgh, I would say that he wouldn't get many, because the Pittsburgh Steelers have a public relations department that is very good at keeping things in house. They always have and always will. Every now and then things will get leaked, and that's not the status quo for the Steelers in terms of their public relations team. But in New York is a different beast. There's so many different papers and magazines and online websites. Someone's going to ask a bunch about it, and it's going to be really interesting to hear the answers that he gives, because absolutely it's an interesting story. If you want to hear my take on that, and some people have said that they would, you have to go back and listen to the Standard as a Standard. Lance and I finished the show with that, and I'll just say that it's good comic relief. That's all I'm going to say. Go back and check it out. Go back and check it out. Okay. Lance said he would go. He would go there to the parade if the Steelers win the Super Bowl. That's good to know. Oh, we got a Patriot fan in the live chat. That's always fun. Sure, they're going to have some good contributions to the discussion. Let's see here. Okay. So, it's one of those situations where I think back to the original question here, the fan bases. Which fans are best? Look, I don't really need. It's one of those situations where we, as Steeler fans, really don't need to concern ourselves with anyone else. Take care of your own. The one thing I love hearing, and I know that Dave Schofield is in the live chat. I love to hear when he's a season ticket holder. People go to Heinz Field and they're from other teams, and they say that was probably one of the better away game experiences I've ever had. Everyone was nice. There was some verbal jabs back and forth, but all was in jest. It was a good time. There were no threats. There were no fights. Now, I know that every NFL stadium has their fights. There were some that were caught on film last year at Heinz Field. But I think that, I've been to some other stadiums in Heinz Field, and I watched, obviously, as a Steeler fan, you're going to feel at home there. But I've watched how Steeler fans have handled opposing fans, and I've always felt it's been with class. And so that's the one thing I think I want to get across to all the fans listening to this, is that you don't want to come off as that obnoxious fan. You can be as diehard as anyone else, but you don't want to be that guy or that girl. You want to make sure that you are extremely, uh, you know, respectful when you're out in public, when you're, whatever. You represent the Pittsburgh Steelers, and so I love hearing that, well, I went to Heinz Field, and I know a good friend of mine's a Ravens season ticket holder, and he's been to Heinz Field a bunch to watch the Ravens and Steelers games. He said he's never had a negative experience there. I love hearing that. That makes me proud to be a part of Steelers Nation. So there you go. So that's it, folks. That's it for the Steelers burning question this week. Not a whole lot of news. That's good news in this time of year. So make sure you check out what's coming up. So tomorrow night, that's Thursday night, we'll have the Steelers preview. Myself, Brian Davis, and Dave Schofield will be here to talk about the last draft pick of this draft class. It's Derwin Gray, offensive lineman. Then you have Sunday. Standard is a standard. All those are live on YouTube, so make sure you check us out. If you didn't know we had a YouTube channel, go to YouTube, search BTSC Steelers Radio. Hit the like, hit the subscribe button. We really appreciate it. As always, make sure you're checking out BehindTheSteelCurtain.com for all your Pittsburgh Steelers needs. We will see you next week for another episode of The Steelers Burning Question.